Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Monday, August 25th, 2025. Now, if you haven't been here before and you do find these tropical weather outlook and discussions very helpful, informative, detailed, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that bell notification icon if you haven't already to get daily tropical weather updates, including live streaming coverage of any landfalling hurricane or tropical storm. Hit that like button and share this video with their family and friends on social media. So with that being said, here's a look at the latest satellite imagery here across the entire Atlantic. And what we're looking at right now is Tropical Storm Fernand, which is moving to the northeast here, not going to cause any problems whatsoever as it remains over the open Atlantic. We're still keeping an eye on a very weak diffused tropical wave over much of the Caribbean, but most of the ensemble members have really backed off on that, so there is no chances of that developing according to the National Hurricane Center. But otherwise out here, much more stable, not much convection going on due to a lot of dry air, some deep layer vertical wind shear that is out there. Part of the unfavorable environment here of the Madden-Julian oscillation that's going to keep things at bay for at least another week or two, but things are for sure going to change as we go into the early to the middle part of September. So with that being said, let's take a look now at our latest 12Z European deterministic 850 millibar cyclonic relative vorticity plot here from tropicaltidbits.com. And what we're looking for here is any areas of orange and red, which indicate a lot of spin in the atmosphere at 5,000 feet above the surface. And then of course these wind barbs tell us which way the wind is blowing from, and these lines or these height lines tell us what part of the atmosphere has higher geopotential heights, or in other words of saying topographical map here of showing us where the ridges of high pressure are, where there's areas of lower pressure that you see here. So now that you know the map, let's put this into motion, because Tropical Storm Fernand is going to be moving out to the northeast, and it's going to really fall apart here over the next 3 to 4 days. In fact, I would not even be surprised if this disintegrates even sooner than what the National Hurricane Center is showing, because of this strong westerly flow aloft and also at the surface, bringing increasing vertical wind shear over the system as it remains to the northwestern part of the subtropical ridge out here in the Atlantic. But going over the next 5 days, nothing really concerned about at all to end out August. In fact, August is ending out very quiet. Utterly enough, a lot of people are posting a lot of stuff on this saying, oh, wow, August is ending out quiet despite a ramp up in tropical activity. And that's how it typically goes. But over the last couple of years, it's been very quiet in late August into early September. So now going all the way out to day 7 here, what we do have by the first part of September here, the first day that is for Monday, we do have a tropical wave that comes off of Africa, but there's not a whole lot of model support on this by any means. In fact, if we looked at the Canadian model, you can see not much there at all. If we looked at the, let's see, if we looked at the artificial intelligence model, very weak tropical wave there. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty on that, but it does not look like it's going to cause any problems at all over the next 10 days as it moves generally off towards the west-northwest. Now, of course, the Leeward Islands may need to be watching this down the road, but otherwise looking very quiet out there in the Atlantic for the first full week of September is what I'm still thinking. But it's after about the 9th and the 10th of September when things are going to get pretty ugly out here. Very wild, lots of tropical waves that we're going to have to really watch closely for. And the reason why things are going to be quiet out there is because of how much dry air there is. This is what we call the Saharan air layer, especially when it's down here in the subtropical region of the Atlantic, versus up here, it's just dry air in general. And so brown colors indicate drier air. Green, teal colors indicate lots of moisture is in the atmosphere. And this is a look at the deep layers of the atmosphere all the way up from about, say, 10,000 feet all the way up to about 34,000 feet. And it's looking pretty dry here, out here in the Atlantic, very stable. And this has been the problem for June, July, and now it looks like to end August. just so much drier air out here in the Atlantic because of anticyclonic wave breaking events that are going to be taking place. And that continues all the way over the next, say, 10 days. And that is why this tropical wave right about in here may not be much of a problem at all because of all this drier air wrapping all the way around to help choke off things. And that's part of this MJO environment. Not really conducive, but it looks to get more conducive as we go into the middle part of September and beyond. I think we're going to have a very, very, very active, potentially hyperactive, backloaded hurricane season. And some of the comments in my video a couple of days ago saying, I don't think it's going to be hyperactive, David. Don't say that. Don't say that. You just don't know. We could get a lot of activity all bundled up in a matter of about 2 or 3 weeks. And that's what I'm a little worried about for the second half of September into early October. Now, when looking at our vertical deep layer shear environmental forecast, we can see all of this red here indicates a lot of vertical wind shear. Greener and bluer colors indicate lighter vertical wind shear out there. And we can see if we put this into motion, the shear is going to be picking up a little bit. Take note here of the shear vectors going in more like this. So any tropical wave that moves west is going to run into this belt of about 20 knot, maybe even 25 knot of vertical wind shear. And that's going to be enough to really tear these tropical waves apart, and they're just not going to thrive very well. You can see one right here running into that belt of vertical wind shear, some of that drier air getting entrained, and that is why I just don't think we're going to see much in the way of activity, at least over the next, say, 5 to 10 days perhaps. But beyond that, it's still in question, but really by about the 15th. So this is what the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center is mentioning. And you can see there is winds of 60 miles an hour, pressure down to 1,000 millibars, and it is moving to the northeast and even to the northeast at about 14 miles per hour. Again, avoiding Bermuda and fortunately going out to sea here, not causing a lot of problems. And the only thing it's really doing is keeping our tropical storm days going. So we're adding each day to this along to go with our ACE points or our accumulated cyclone energy, making the Atlantic relatively quiet now, only just with one named storm and no highlighted areas out here for the time being. I would even be surprised if we have another completely blank map here for at least 4 or 5 days straight before things get really busy out there in the Atlantic by the middle of September. So now let's take a look now at our latest European ensemble forecast, as well as our GEFS, then the next gen, as well as the DeepMind model. We want to look at our AI ensembles as well. And we can see there is definitely a mixed noise signal out there. And what I mean by that is there's no clustering of individual tropical waves. This is just kind of all littered out here, very disheveled, not really organized. And so since there is some members showing some tropical development here, for the 4th day of September, there's just a lot of discontinuity out of this, and you'll see that on different ensembles right now. There's also a lot of discontinuity out of this in the eastern portion there of the United States, as well as the Western Atlantic. The only thing we have is organized is basically Fernand on the latest European ensemble. Now, when we take a look at our GEFS ensemble, you'll see there is, again, discontinuity, lots of noise going on, very low signal of concern out here in the next 10 days, which is great news to see. But you never know, things could perk up, but I'm pretty dang confident, at least for the first couple of days of September, things are looking extremely quiet, probably not even that, all the way maybe even into the first full week of September, looking at very quiet conditions. When you look at our gen control, or wait, this is the DeepMind Google model AI forecast, and you can see its ensembles not picking up a whole lot as well, just only a couple of members, keeping things really nice and quiet out of this. And then look at here, When we look at our FNV3 model, another AI model, and you can see here a very mixed signal, but there is a little bit of a signal beyond the 4th or the 5th of September, but right now it is too low confidence to really make a big deal out of it right now at the very moment. Therefore, when we take a look here at our chances of a tropical depression to strike your given area in a 8-day forecast from Monday, August 25th, through September the 1st on that Monday. And you could see the MDR looking nice and quiet, which is nice to see. No chances there. Also in the Gulf and the Northwestern Caribbean looking at quiet conditions. Although there is Fernand racking up the chances there up to 100%. But that's a given the fact that we do have Fernand out there with 60-mile-an-hour winds. Now going out to week number 2 from September 1st, which is a Monday, all the way through Monday, September the 8th. So basically through the first full week of September, we're looking at rather low chances of tropical development out of this in the Caribbean, as well as the Gulf, as well as the Western Atlantic. But chances do begin to perk up here in the MDR, which is something that we'll need to really be considerate of going forward. There is a 30 to 40% chance of tropical development and even a little bit of a green area there, indicating up to a 50% chance of tropical development. And this is going to be week number 2. So this is all the way through the middle of September, and you can see those chances do go up across much of the MDR as well as the Western Atlantic and the Gulf. That is why I think right around the 14th and the 15th, probably even the 10th, I would say, right about mid-September is when I think things are really going to get busy out of the deep tropics here as we get into another favorable environment for tropical development. And this is going to continue all the way into the middle to the end of September. So all the way through Monday, September 22nd. We have very high chances here. And that's a 60% chance of tropical depression formation, including for the Caribbean with elevated chances there, about 30%, including the Gulf and much of the central and western portion there of the Atlantic. We're up to about a 10 to 30% chance of formation. And that's the furthest this goes out right now. It doesn't go out into October, but I'll tell you, things are looking very busy out there from about the 10th and the 11th of September and beyond. And when we take a look here at our latest coral reef watch sea surface temperature anomalies here as of yesterday, this is delayed by always 1 day. So I do apologize by that, but this gives us a pretty good idea with what we're seeing. And clearly, without any mistake, this is where Aaron tracked. You could even see the sea surface temperature anomalies here. I mean, this is pretty crazy. All of these below average sea surface temperature anomalies left behind Aaron. And that's what you get when you upwell a lot of that cooler water beneath the hurricane, given how large its wind field was. That is why we see that. And this right here, my folks, cold anomalies up here in this subtropical Atlantic. So we can put below there, letter B. And then over here, we have a very warm, favorable Iberian Peninsula current off of the coast of Africa. And in fact, look at the anomalies off of the coast of Africa there near the Cabo Verde Islands, running anywhere between 2 to 3.5 degrees above the long-term average. This is pretty substantial by all means. And so any tropical waves that come off of Africa here are more than likely going to thrive pretty well in this part of the Atlantic because our water anomalies are well above average, including for the Caribbean, the Gulf, and most of the southwestern Atlantic as a whole running above average. So this is going to be the area that we really are going to need to watch as we go throughout most of September, that MDR area for intense hurricanes perhaps, as well as a lot of named storms. That is why I am concerned about between about the 11th of September and beyond until about the middle to the end of October. And you could actually see this on the actual sea surface temperatures. These are not anomalies at all. And boy, oh boy, The Gulf is as warm as it can get. I'm being dead serious. Water temperatures there as a whole between 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. That is unbelievably warm, including for the Caribbean, running at about 30 degrees Celsius right now. I mean, that is just crazy. That is mid to upper 80s in the Caribbean. And look at this, over off the coast of Africa, running already about 28 to almost 29 degrees Celsius. And even over here in the central portion of the Atlantic there in the southwestern region, running at about 29 to 30 Celsius, or about 84 to 86 to even 87 of Fahrenheit. So really favorable, folks. And I hate to fearmonger and cause panic, but this is bad. This is not good at all. And it's only a matter of, do we get like a Milton situation? Do we get a Matthew track? Do we get a Laura, a Grace? Anything that moves in the deep tropics here with a lot of upper ocean heat content, if it takes full advantage, it is going to be very bad. This is a recipe for serious disaster. So then we take a look here at our total amount of tropical cyclone heat potential. You can see anything in red and orange here is very sufficient for producing very intense hurricanes. Something in the books of Aaron. You saw how strong Aaron got overnight. And Aaron formed literally with all of these yellow anomalies, not extremely high upper ocean heat content. And look at over here in the northwestern portion of the Caribbean. That is unbeatable upper ocean heat content on the order of about 175 to 200 units. Over 200 units here in the loop current of the Gulf, and most of the Gulf right now is as favorable as you can get when it comes to sea surface temperature, anomalies, and other factors. Now, when we look at our upper ocean heat content anomalies, just like our sea surface temperature anomalies, above average across much of the Caribbean as well as the Gulf and the southwestern Atlantic, there is nothing to me that will there is nothing that will stop this hurricane season of being very active at all. This is concerning, and we need to be ready for a very backloaded, very active hurricane season ahead, especially, again, from about the 11th of September and beyond into early October. And so when we take a look at our latest MJO forecast, you can see that the MJO right now is pretty much in phase 4. That's why things are shutting down in the Atlantic. This is what is supposed to happen when you get a favorable MJO or a very organized one where there are bouts of activity in the Atlantic followed by bouts of inactivity in the Atlantic. And so right now we are in an unfavorable zone for of the MJO where we're not going to get a whole lot of activity out of this, except for Fernand, which formed basically over here in parts of the MJO. So what ends up happening here is the MJO is going to slide quickly all the way into phase 1, but barely out of the null phase. So something kind of like over here is where we expect that the MJO is going to get. And unfortunately, during the middle to the latter part of September, phase 1, typically phase 2, phase 3, and even perhaps phase 4 are more favorable for the Atlantic versus if it were June or July, where we strictly have to rely on phases 2, 3, and 4, if that makes sense. So right now, the MJO, based on the latest European ensemble forecast calling for that, the MJO is going to be sliding back into phase 1 as we go into about the 9th and the 10th of September. Therefore, when we take a look at our velocity potential anomaly, we can see that a lot of the favorable environment right now is in the Western Pacific. That's why we have a lot of typhoon activity, a lot of cyclonic activity going on there. Lots of sinking motion right now in the Eastern Pacific as well as most of the Atlantic, including for most of Africa. That is why we are not seeing anything favorable at this time. That is fortunate. Again, it could be the other way around, folks, where we have hyperactive activity. But it does look like as we go into the first full week of September, things are going to gradually get more favorable, especially as we go into the 5th and the 7th of September, where we do have some favorable environment moving across the Eastern Pacific and then getting into the Caribbean. But when we look at the extended forecast here, you can see the continuation of that convective coupled Kelvin wave. As you can see right here, we have another one moving across the area, and then it looks like another one is going to get ready to move through. So the first one looks to move through between about the 8th and the 15th of September, followed by a brief bout of inactivity. But because of climatology, I think things are going to remain very busy. And then, of course, especially by the middle to the latter part of September, an exceptionally strong convective coupled Kelvin wave here is going to be moving through, along to go with another convective coupled Kelvin wave by the early part of October. So basically from about this box onward, so I'm going to draw a box. Basically, from here on out, going down with time is going to be very, very busy for the Atlantic. And you can see the thumbnail for reference where all that upward motion is going to be. So with that being said, if you haven't been here before and you did find today's tropical weather outlook and discussion very helpful, very detailed, informative, and life-saving, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification icon to get all of my daily tropical weather updates, including live tropical weather coverage of any landfalling hurricane or tropical storm within 24 to a couple of days, that is 48 hours. Hit that like button and share this video with your family and friends on social media. As always, have a great rest of your Monday here on the 25th of August, 2025. As always, the tropics remain quiet right now, but looks to change as we go into the middle of September. Take this time to get prepared for any potential landfalls that may occur during the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be back with you more in a couple of days with another update on the tropics.